Hey Mama, I'm so glad you're here. I am talking today about identity in motherhood and the struggles that we as moms face in that new role that we get to take on. And it's wonderful and it's beautiful and we love it. But how it changes us and how it can be really hard to figure out who we are in the whole mess of motherhood. And it's something that I know that I experienced. And I don't know if you call it an identity crisis or what exactly, but motherhood is just this really weird, unique time where there is a distinctive point, there is a literal date and time when you take on a new identity, when your life changes. And you have to grab it with both hands because you get thrust into a role that you could never be prepared for. It doesn't matter how many books you've read, how many children that you have babysat. You will never be prepared for your own child because nobody knows that child like God and like you and your husband. And so it's completely new and you are learning who they are while you're also trying to figure out who you are and who you are as mom. And we take this job and we hand this title to women and we just sort of expect that everyone's going to know what to do with it. It's everyone's a mom, right? I mean, I have a mom, you have a mom, everybody has a mom. So obviously they must have figured it out. And if they figured it out and all of the other moms at the grocery store seem to have it figured out, then I must be able to just figure it out. And we don't really talk about how hard it is to figure it out, to figure out our identity in motherhood. And sometimes we end up putting so much stock into that identity that we sort of lose who we are as a person and everything that we were and everything that we are going to be, and we just become mom. And it can get a little bit frustrating because we are more than that. We really are more than just a mom. We're not just a singular person. We are multifaceted. We've got so many other parts to us. And for a long, long time, we really are just a mom. And it's hard to break free from that, to break out of that, and to understand who it is that God says we are. Finding our motherhood identity in God. And that is the key. That is the key. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today is reshaping our mindset about being a mom and the beauty of it and the difficulty of it, but also framing our thoughts on not how the world would define motherhood and not how the world would tell us how we should be behaving and how we should be seeking things, but looking at how God tells us to seek things and framing our identity around that. So wherever you're at today, Mama, get the volume turned up and let's get into this. Hey, Mama, I know you're busy. You're living in piles of laundry, you don't know what you're making for your next meal, and there's a really annoying kid song stuck in your head. And through all of this, you're wondering how you're going to build a joyful Christian home. How do I know all of this? Because that was me. Hi, I'm Alyssa, teacher turned stay-at-home boy mom, blogger, podcaster, and Jesus lover. And I know that while this motherhood journey is beautiful, it's also messy. And the best way to enjoy it is to invite God into our chaos and let Him be the rest that we so desperately need. So together, let's strengthen your relationship with God. Let's build a Christian home that is built on biblical truths and enjoy this motherhood journey. You got this, Mama. So I'm going to start by looking at the story from John 5, verse 2-9. And this is the story of the man who was crippled. And he was sitting beside a pool that people could be healed at. So there were lots of other people there who had illnesses and ailments, and they were waiting for the opportunity to be able to get into the waters and be healed. And this man had been crippled for 38 years. So you can imagine that he likely identified himself as a cripple. That was probably all that he was. And I mean, there wasn't much else at that time for him to do. If you couldn't walk, if you couldn't use your hands, I mean, you were crippled. And he was focused on that pool because that pool was supposed to heal him. And that's what he so desperately wanted. And rightly so, because I'd like to be able to use my legs too. I quite enjoy having legs to be able to get up and move around. And so he's focused on this pool and someone says to him, "Would you like to be healed?" And the man's like, well, of course. And it's Jesus. Jesus has come to him and said, hey, like, would you like to be healed? Would you like to walk again? And the man says, yes. And Jesus says, okay, pick up your bed and walk. And the man does. And in all of this, there's all of these other people who could be healed as well, but they were all so focused on that pool that they missed Jesus healing this man who had been sitting there. I mean, we don't know how long he'd been sitting there. He'd been crippled for 38 years. So we can imagine he was probably sitting there for a while. And he gets up and he walks away. And it makes me wonder about the pool that we sit beside. And how is it that we identify ourselves? Do we spend our lives identifying ourselves as a cripple, as somebody who is not capable of doing something? We are not able to do something. We are broken. We are just not enough. Maybe we have positive things that we identify ourselves as. We are a mom. We are a wife. Maybe we were an artist or a teacher. We were a nurse. We're a cook. We're a homemaker. We have all of these descriptive words that we use to identify ourselves. And again, sometimes they're negative. Sometimes we talk about anxiety or physical limitations, lost opportunities, we're in organized chaos, the mistakes that we make. But all of these things are words that the world would use to identify us. And especially in motherhood, we take on that mom. We are mom, and it consumes us so much so that we often forget about who else we used to be. I know that, like, I used to be a teacher. I used to be an equestrian. I used to be very creative. I would draw, and I did lots of creative crafting and things like that. And I used to be able to just get up and drive across the country if I wanted to. And after having kids, I was mom. That was it. I gave up everything else. And I wanted to. I gave it up willingly for my children, but I became identified as mom. And I started to identify myself in other ways. Mom with anxiety, mom with, a short temper, mom who gets frustrated easily, mom who is disorganized, mom who is tired. All of these things that are a definition that the world gives us. That is not ever anything that God would define me as. And God would never define that cripple man as just a cripple. He would never say, this is who you are, and that's all you're ever going to be. Because God gives us so much more than that. And we may find an abundance of joy in motherhood. I mean, it definitely is. When you look at your babies, when you look at your toddlers, when you look at your preschoolers and your children as they're growing, they are miracles. They are absolute miracles. And you have that mama bear love for them. But when you look at yourself and in all of that chaos of raising those children and building that Christian home, we sometimes take that identity that the world has given us, and then we seek the solution that the world says that we need. And in a world that wants to define you by your actions and by who the world says you are, we really need to be turning to God and being defined by His action of love. And we cannot allow ourselves to be identified by the world. Yes, we can say that we are a mom, but we have to be more than that. And we have to be what God says that we are. And I went through this where I was struggling with who I was. I had given up so much, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to some of that. Did I really want to pick up some of those tasks and activities and start them over again as somebody who was a little bit rusty? Or was there something else that maybe I could look at doing? And starting to feel the need to sort of change my identity. My kids were growing up. They didn't need me like they did before. I wasn't mom 24/7. I could actually be somebody else for a few minutes. And I started to struggle with that. Who was I going to be? What was my new identity going to be? And, looking at what the world says about moms feeling exhausted and moms who are struggling and moms, you should do this and moms, you should do that. And if you're a woman, you need to be taking these vitamins and you should be getting this much exercise, and all of the solutions that the world had to all of my little problems and all of these things that I had identified myself as. And I realized that I was looking for those solutions in the wrong place. I was looking for worldly solutions for my worldly definitions. And that's not really what I needed to be doing. Those were not going to be long-term solutions. I was sitting at a pool that was promising me something that it could not deliver. And what I needed to be doing was focusing on Jesus. And once that little light bulb went off, and I mean, I'm talking like I was reading my Bible, I'm like, worshiping God, I'm spending time with God, and I was still sitting in the thick of something, that when that little light bulb moment went off and I realized that I needed to be asking God how He defined me, and it just changed everything. Just completely, it was like the scales fell from my eyes and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not a mom, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an artist, I'm not somebody who has anxiety. I am a child of God. I am redeemed, I am loved, I am saved, and that's all that matters, because God's identity doesn't change. And I was like, wow, I am like in my 30s and just sort of realizing this now. And I think because motherhood had changed me so much, I had sort of forgotten that part of me was still the same. Even though it had changed, I have grown in my faith since becoming a mom. I have grown significantly, and I'm amazed at myself, honestly, at who I have become. But I am still a child of God. I am still that same child that I was when I was 5, that I am today. That part does not change. That person grows, but she doesn't change. She's always there. And God, that's how God defines me. That is how He defines me. And it doesn't matter if I'm a mom or if I'm an artist or if I'm a homemaker. It doesn't matter if I'm a wife. It doesn't matter. All of those are the world's definitions of how we do things. The anxiety, the joy, the way that we do things. If we're fast at something, if we're strong, it's all worldly descriptions. And the world's going to have a solution for any problem that we can bring to the world. But they are not solutions that are going to last forever. And we have to seek those solutions from God. That is who is our identity is in Christ. And He is going to give us those words to define ourselves as we walk through our motherhood role, because our motherhood role is going to change. It is probably changing for you day to day as your children grow. You become a mom of a toddler, you become a mom of a preschool, you become a mom of a teenager, you become a mom of adult children, you become a mom with grandchildren, so you're a grandma. And it is constantly changing. And so we are constantly having to change our identity. And in that, where our lives change, we get new jobs and new hobbies and new friends. And we have to stay constant in our identity with God, because that is the thing that does not change. And that is what's going to carry us through those difficult days, those days of uncertainty, the days when we feel like we maybe lost our temper faster than we should have, on the days when we had an absolutely blessed day and it was just like sunshine and rainbows all day long. We have to maintain that identity that we are a child of God. And that He is leading us into those green pastures, that as we are nurturing our children, that as our children call us mom, as our husbands call us wives, as our mothers and fathers call us daughters, that we are a daughter of the King. And that does not change. That is not changed by anything that we could ever think or say or do. So seek God in a world that is full of distractions, good distractions. We have wonderful, joyful distractions in our lives that God gives us these good things so that we can have lives that are enjoyable and fun, and where we can use His gifts and His talents. But in that world of distractions, we need to be seeking God, because otherwise we will lose our focus. We will lose who it is that we are, especially in those thick and long hard days of motherhood, where the hormones are really kicking in, the lack of sleep, the busyness, the same tasks day after day, where you are constantly being needed, but you are not meeting your own needs. And you have to just keep telling yourself that you are a child of God. You are loved by the King, and that love does not change, that it is the same from day to day. And so when you are seeking your identity in motherhood, you need to be seeking your identity in Christ. That is who you are. That does not change. That the pool you sit beside, it needs to be a pool where you're focusing on God. You cannot be focusing on those waters because they are not going to heal you. That's what the world has told you is going to give you what you want. And what you really need to be doing is seeking Jesus in that crowd, is seeking and focusing your eyes on him, because he is the healing and he is giving you the identity and changing your identity from cripple to someone who can walk. And that is what we need as moms. So I pray that this encourages you, Mama. I know that we are all in different stages of motherhood and in our lives. And some of us, it's not an issue. It might not be an issue today because it wasn't an issue for me until just recently. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. A little midlife crisis here. And we have to hold on to those words and we have to hold on to those scriptures and be reminded that sometimes we're going to hit those points in our lives and we need to know that this is what we fall back on. This is who we are, and that God is going to love you regardless of how you define yourself and regardless of how the world defines you. So be encouraged, Mama, and I pray that you are able to pray on that. Go and read that verse or that section of verse in the Bible about the cripple. It's really beautiful to read about Jesus and about the things that he did and he said and how he changed people's lives and how he's still changing people's lives. And so go and do that, Mama. Go and just, that can be your little daily Bible study today, and pray that the pool that you sit beside, that your eyes do not focus on that pool, that they focus on Jesus, on the one who can give you the identity that you need. Thanks for joining me today. Did you know that Busy Moms Christian Homes and Little Bit of Lavender is more than just a podcast and a blog? I have resources available on Etsy and Amazon to help you with your walk every single day. If you need some scripture cards, if you need devotionals, if you need planners, I've got them all. The links for all of that is going to be in the show notes, or you can head over to littlebitoflavender.ca for more information. I pray your coffee stays hot, your children stay calm, and you keep Jesus in your heart. Until next time, Mama. God bless.